Himeko Nova is arguably one of the best DPS units upon release, but can be frustrating to learn because of how overcomplicated her kit is. So before I go into builds, Eidolons, and her performance compared to other DPSs, I want to go over what Himeko Nova does and how to use her. I promise you this part is necessary and will help you utilize her much better than any other guide out there. So firstly, Himeko Nova introduces to the game a new mechanic, assist skills. Basically, teammates can use this assist skill to launch an attack from Himeko Nova herself, but will usually consume the turn. However, if it's an Astro Express member, they can use the assist skill at no cost, and this also activates one of two special modes for Himeko Nova. Verdict, which comes from Dunheng, Trailblazer, and Sunday. This increases Himeko Nova's damage by 100% and an additional 100% during her ultimate. This also allows you to launch one free assist skill if you use 2 ally ultimates up to 2 times per ultimate. Whereas for Decimation, which comes from March, Welt, and the other Himeko, it increases all allies crit damage by 100% and additionally increases skill crit damage by 100%. Instead of 2 ultimates for one free assist skill, it's based on the number of enemies you hit. If you hit 9 enemies, Himeko Nova will launch one free assist skill, again up to 2 times per ultimate. Anyways, the last important part about her kit is that Himeko Nova can use assist skills on her own turn, and this will refresh that one assist skill for the rest of your team as long as her regular skill that can come from a technique is active. So in summary, Himeko Nova gets 2 assist skills per turn, one from an ally, one from herself, and Himeko Nova gets 2 free assist skills from Verdict or Decimation per ultimate. So a very commonly asked question is, when do you use Verdict and when do you use Decimation? In general, Verdict is better for lower target stages, while Decimation is much better for many enemies, usually even overtaking at 3 targets already. I know it can still be a bit confusing, so I'll show you how I play some of my runs. This is a full Verdict team with Sparkle, Sunday, and Remembrance Trailblazer. And the idea behind this team is that you want to refresh Himeko Nova's turns to spam the assist skills. So I start out with Verdict on RMC, and even after hitting maximum energy, I wait for Sunday's turn to advance Himeko. This combines with Mem support, which is actually a good thing here because this allows her to save buff uptime. Only then do I use her ultimate for pretty good damage. By the way, during her ultimate, you usually want to accumulate source energy to 3 and then use it, so the way you play your ultimate almost never changes. Afterwards, I use Sunday's ultimate during Himeko's turn, again to save buff uptime, before I use her own assist skill. So in this short period of time, I've managed to use 5 assist skills in a row. But because I am trying to zero cycle, I waste some of the assist skills so that Sunday can get the last turn in the cycle, and as the second wave starts, I instantly use Himeko Nova's ultimate. This is because of her technique. It uses her skill once at the start of the wave, so right after her ultimate, I immediately regenerate more energy. Next, I use RMC's ultimate early. This way Sparkle can't fully advance Himeko, and I once again save buff uptime for maximum damage. By the way, Himeko's ultimate is kind of similar to Silverwolf's attack. If you defeat the wave too quickly, it will still refund your remaining attacks, so you don't have to be too afraid of wasting your damage, and this actually allows me to deal decent damage right at the start of phase 2. Finally, I repeat the rotation one more time while using ultimates to activate the Verdict assist skill, and I actually don't use her skill here because Sunday will still have his assist skill the next turn, so I don't have to worry about that yet. I can maximize her damage with the assist skill. Once more, I combine the advances and use Sunday's ultimate for the last Verdict proc while regenerating energy for the last ultimate, the 5th one in this rotation, and I zero cycle the stage with lots of damage to spare. And that is the general gist of it. Once you've got the setup down, it becomes quite easy to play Himeko. In fact, Decimation is actually even easier. We will usually run Welt and Mortonex, and since there is no action advance in that team, we just use Welt assist into Himeko assist, and then you just repeat and repeat. The teams where it can be a bit tougher are against stages like Storm Nightmare, where you run both Verdict and Decimation. So like on this Flame Weaver stage, you can switch to Decimation on Welt first to clear out the clones. Afterwards, you can let Sunday switch to Verdict, and then you will deal better single target and ultimate damage. So hopefully you got a clearer picture from these two examples, but as per usual, I will have more Himeko showcases soon. So if you want more gameplay guides, you can wait for that. Usually this is where I go into builds, but because the kit is so tied to Verdict and Decimation, I think it makes more sense to go over team building and team setups first. Like I said, Verdict is usually better for lower targets, while Decimation is better for higher targets. However, because only one Astro Express member gets the free assist skill, you must run at least one member at E0, otherwise it's just unplayable. So you are very much restricted by that, and thankfully that also does help narrow down the teams that we can use. And hence the conclusion I reached for the two best teams are Sparkle Sunday Dunheng for Verdict and Welt Motonex Ho for Decimation. These are the two teams that I generally recommend to most players. Of course, there are a lot of other variations like Welt Motonex RMC, Welt Motonex 3B, Welt RMC Dunheng, and so on and so on. But the reason why I don't recommend some of those teams, like for example Welt plus RMC, is because it gives too little energy, while Welt plus Sunday gives too much damage boost, so it would be better to use another unit instead. I did also try Evernight Hyacinth Cyrene by the way, but that team cleared slower than the Motonex team in Pure Fiction, probably because Evernight only buffs Memo Sprites, which is why I didn't calculate it in the end, but it can still kinda work for now. But anyways, for the Sparkle Sunday team, please do not blindly go hyperspeed. The best way to play this team is to sandwich Himeko, if that makes sense. Like if Dunheng or RMC is faster than Sparkle, you get one extra assist skill each rotation, which obviously means more damage and more energy. This is why I usually run 134 to 140 plus speed for Sparkle and Sunday, while Dunheng and RMC were around 150 to 160 speed. For Decimation like the Welt Motonex Ho team, if there are sufficient enemies, you can run Tutorial Eagle on Welt since you can pretty easily get 2 outs in the same cycle, which would then translate to 3 turns. And ideally, both Motonex and Himeko are faster than the ultimate countdown. This means being faster than the equivalent of 140 speed. With that out of the way, let's continue with the builds. Let's start with the obvious ones, as the Navigator IC sees it, or the name, and Fallen Star Anchorage are pretty much tailor-made for her, so you obviously want to farm that. If you want to use some transitional pieces, Scholar's alright, but it's just a worse version of the Best in Sword. And for main stats, you want a crit chest, attack or speed boots, usually always attack orb, and rope. Attack boots with Sparkle obviously, otherwise you run speed boots in 99% of cases. And the attack orb actually outperforms damage right now because the two best teams use Welt, Motonex or Sunday, and they all already give you a ton of damage boost. You also almost always want to be running attack rope other than for Pure Fiction, because the battle is so long in Pure Fiction and you can very easily use up both free assist skills. Energy regen actually helps with those and cleared one cycle faster from my testing. Now for light cones, I've split it up into Verdict and Decimation so that you can get a better perspective on it. But first, let's talk about her signature. It's a 32% defense ignore, and she gains 6 energy when using an assist skill, and an additional 20% assist skill damage boost, stacking up to 3 times. At the maximum 3 stacks, it also buffs ultimate damage by the same amount. I've already seen some people saying the Herta S1 is quite close, but that was not the case for me. It was closer in the Verdict team, but for Decimation, it actually lost Himeko Nova one whole ultimate, and hence some assist skills. The damage boost is quite nice on this light cone, but it's just not enough to compete with the 32% defense ignore her signature light cone has, so on average it's already almost 20% worse than her signature. The next few options you can pause and take a look for yourself, but the one I want to highlight is Eternal Calculus. This is the best performing completely free to play light cone, and I've actually calculated this at 3 targets. So it can still perform better at 5 targets like in Decimation teams, and the speed buff can help you invest more into other substats, so it's especially strong in Pure Fiction, just like with Genius's Repulse and Seriousness of Breakfast. The recent DPS units have really absurd Eidolon scaling, and Himeko Nova is no exception. Firstly, E1 basically makes it easier to use the free assist skill, but it's not that strong of an Eidolon yet, because at E2, Himeko Nova's assist skill cap pattern is now increased to 2 and gains a 30% independent multiplier. So it already deals insane damage, but that's not all. Non-Astro Express members can now also use the assist skill for free. Obviously opens up a lot more options and you're no longer restricted to just Astro Express members, but for comparison's sake, I'm still using the same team here, and it is still a massive increase in damage for this team, another completely broken E2. E4 shares Himeko Nova's res pen with the team and she additionally gains 10%. It's quite an average Eidolon, but can be strong in some Decimation teams with another strong DPS unit like Motonex. Lastly, E6 increases her rest pen by, again, another 20%, but also increases ally assist skill damage by 75%, and the mind-boggling game-breaking part of this Eidolon is that it's now a max of 6 source energy during her ultimate, and she also gains 1 additional bounce of 160% attack if you consume 6 source energy. It doesn't sound very broken, but it's because the wording is kind of vague and confusing. Himeko Nova gets 30% bounce for each source energy used, and if she uses 3 or more, each bounce gains 30%. So at 6 source energy, it's actually 6 times 60%, which is why it almost doubles her ultimate damage, putting her DPAV at 306,000 for Verdict and 348,000 for Decimation. These numbers may not mean a lot to you if you don't understand what they do, which is why I have this DPS comparison here. At Welt E2, Himeko Nova plus Mortonex is actually the highest raw damage team in the game at 3 targets, beating out even Sustainers Nova Flare Firefly. Whereas Verdict is still outperformed by the Ash Veil Mortonex team, but deals more damage than the other very strong teams like Silver Wolf, Mono Remembrance, and Evanesia. But wait, in actual gameplay, upon her release and shortly after, Himeko Nova will not perform as insanely well as she does here. From the team comparisons, you can already kinda tell. Himeko Nova does much better when dealing with many enemies. I mean, at the end of the day, she is still an erudition unit, right? But for some reason, a ton of the new stages are bound stages. So even if they can summon many mobs, you still need to deal a lot of single target damage, and this hurts Himeko Nova a lot in actual gameplay. Even at E0S1, I found it quite a bit harder to zero cycle as compared to previous DPS units like Mortonex, Silver Wolf, and Evanesia. And this is more of a concern for the future, but her kit at E0 is incredibly clunky. Because Himeko Nova has no energy overflow, at some points in the battle, especially with the Verdict team, it is very awkward. You need to apply the buffs to deal decent damage, but doing so will use the assist skill, and that wastes energy for Himeko. Unfortunately, you just kinda have to find like a middle ground where you waste enough energy but not too much. But Mortonex Blade, literally the unit before Himeko Nova, has energy overflow, so I cannot comprehend why Himeko Nova does not have this mechanic. It would make rotations a lot better and would increase her performance by quite a bit for Verdict teams. Of course, she's incredibly tied to Astro Express members as well, so you can't really team build well, and you will probably run into some diminishing returns here or there. This is why even though she is the highest theoretical raw damage DPS right now, in actual gameplay that may not be the case, and in the future she probably will be overtaken by the Elysian or the follow-up teams, since those are still very obviously incomplete. So I'm not sure if Himeko Nova will get any supports after her release, because if she doesn't, I'm quite afraid that she will fall off in just a few patches, but that's something for the future, I guess. That's all for my Himeko guide and review. As always, thanks for watching, and see you.